Welcome to Resource PNG. It has been a big week in the resource sector in Papua New Guinea, with Oil Search announcing a proposed acquisition of energy company InterOil in a deal worth 6.5 billion kina. The announcement, which was made known to the market last Friday, is said to be one of the most significant in PNG's history. Here is a look at what has transpired so far in regards to this announcement.
It is an agreed deal between the two boards of the companies.
On the morning of Friday, May the 20th, 2016, Oil Search Limited made two major announcements regarding its operations. The first, an ambitious plan to acquire InterOil, a deal worth 6.5 billion kina. And secondly, an MOU with French supergiant company Total for the sale of 60% of InterOil's stake in PRL 15, as well as a similar percentage in InterOil's exploration assets.
The first one is that the boards of Oil Search and InterOil have agreed to potentially merge the two organisations. So Oil Search will effectively acquire, issue shares in Oil Search for the acquisition of the InterOil company. The second deal that we announced today is we've acquired, as I say, potentially InterOil, but we've also sold down then 60% of the interests in InterOil's licenses to Total, the French company, who already operate El Cantaloupe. So effectively what that does is it provides Oil Search with substantial cash. Total will pay us an equivalent value for their share, 60% of InterOil. It bolsters our balance sheet. It aligns Oil Search and Total in a program of development for El Cantaloupe and various ways in which El Cantaloupe development and Papua LNG can cooperate with PNG LNG. Yeah, I've always thought we were a national champion. We're just a bigger champion now if this deal goes ahead. And it gives us, as I say, a very strong balance sheet, gives us a very strong set of assets, and it gives us a great platform and program to develop the next phase of PNG LNG, the next phase of Papua LNG, and to be very influential in that process. This deal delivers us the keys to really drive our next phase of growth, optimising our own interests in PNG LNG and Papua LNG, and we've done it at a good, fair price for everyone.
The moves by Oil Search and InterOil had been unanimously recommended by both company boards, with InterOil's board urging its shareholders to approve the acquisition proposal put forward by Oil Search at its annual general meeting next month. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill congratulated all parties in this deal, saying that the deal will deliver tangible benefits for Papua New Guinea. The Prime Minister also highlighted the benefit of the execution of an MOU between Oil Search and Total for a back-to-back sale of Oil Search's interest acquired to Total following the completion of the InterOil acquisition.
Investments that are coming in are creating jobs for Papua New Guineans. We cannot continue to stop investors and try and make it difficult for them to come into the country. We need big investors that are going to employ thousands of people, and that is why we are now talking to in the sectors like the petroleum and mining sector. People like ExxonMobil are important players. People like Oil Search are very important players. Total is a very important player.
Yes. Petroleum and Energy Minister Ben Micah also congratulated all parties involved.
I congratulate all those involved on putting together a deal that is highly beneficial to all involved. This announcement will result in increased prosperity, jobs and development for the people of PNG. Furthermore, one of our nation's biggest growth opportunities, the proposed Papua LNG project, which is underpinned by the gas fields in PRL 15, will benefit from cost efficiencies resulting from the deal. The PNG government will now have increased interest in one of our nation's biggest growth opportunities, the proposed Papua LNG project, which is underpinned by the gas fields in PRL 15.
However, the Independent Consumer and Competition Commission, the ICCC, has raised concerns over the recently announced proposal by Oil Search to acquire InterOil. ICCC Commissioner and CEO Paulus Ain says this deal could substantially lessen the competition within the natural gas market in Papua New Guinea. Section 69 of the ICCC Act which deals with business acquisitions, prohibits acquisitions of assets or shares which could lessen competition in the market. IN says parties in this proposed acquisition should apply to the ICCC for an exemption from Section 69 of the ICCC Act before finalizing this transaction.
The proposed acquisition of InterOil by Oil Search. There is a statutory process stipulated under the ICCC Act that requires any major acquisitions in this country, they're required to come to the ICCC. And we are concerned that we have not been reliably informed or made aware of that proposal until it came out in today's paper. Lately we realized this, that most of these business houses are just going ahead and acquiring one after another, or selling off shares to each other. And we've been very silent on this one because the ICCC Act has been is not very mandatory for them to come to us, and that is why. So we've lately shifted this one to make it mandatory. So everyone will now be coming to the ICCC for any major acquisitions.
After the break, we are joined by Oil Search Managing Director Peter Botton. Welcome back to Resource PNG. It's our pleasure to have with us Peter Botton, Managing Director of Oil Search Limited, to explain a little more about the proposed acquisition of InterOil. Mr. Botton, welcome to Resource PNG.
Good to be here.
Now, to the InterOil acquisition announcement, when exactly did Oil Search begin to seriously consider acquiring InterOil, and what were the factors behind this move?
Well, I suppose the first thing, this has been part of a long-term strategy to build our business in PNG and to further build and cement our position as a regionally significant LNG supplier. The actual transaction goes back probably 6 or 7 months when we were looking at ways of building and reinvesting our revenue streams in PNG. And a standout for us was the potential synergies that we could see between bringing together InterOil with Oil Search and what it would mean in terms of developing Papua LNG, but also potential cooperation between PNG LNG and Papua LNG. Obviously, over the last couple of weeks, that's obviously grown in intensity. We've done a substantial amount of work, and then with InterOil, a significant negotiation to get to where we are today. And where we are is we think we've got a deal that's fair for Oil Search shareholders, fair for InterOil shareholders, and gives them the upside of future development of value for Oil Search, but also a cash payment and potential cash payments related to further reserves that are found in the Elk Antelope field.
Now, InterOil has been somewhat doing it tough in recent times, with their share price now at around $43. They had a high of $60 in Q3 of last year. Is this the right time to be buying into InterOil, and why now instead of waiting for a few more months or even some years?
I suppose firstly, we do think it's the right time. I think everybody knows that oil and gas pricing has been down. Everybody also knows that companies without strong balance sheets and revenue will struggle in this market because that's just the way the business runs. We think it's also a pivotal time in the next phase of development for PNG's LNG business. So doing the deal now allows us to influence potentially how then the next phase of development comes together. If you go down too far, if you delayed it 12 months, you're probably missing a number of opportunities that you can do now and for the rest of the year in bringing the development together. So we think it's an ideal time to get ourselves set to build the platform for this next phase of growth.
InterOil does hold some interest in the fields in the Gulf province. Has that been a sweetener for Oil Search?
Well, certainly the core asset in InterOil is the Elk Antelope field, and it is a world-class field. We don't quite know how big it is, and we'll be drilling an Antelope 7 well later this year to try and find out what the maximum resources are. We'd love to see a very large resource number in Elk Antelope because that means that we can build potentially several LNG trains off the back of the Elk Antelope resource. There are other fields out in the InterOil assets as well, which potentially are quite interesting, but very early in the maturity of exploration and appraisal.
Right. In terms of the structure of the new look oil search, will there be any job losses on the part of InterOil, and what would this new structure of oil search look like?
Look, I think it's a bit too early to say. Firstly, the transaction we think is a compelling transaction for all sides, but it is up to InterOil shareholders to vote on this. And they'll vote sometime in July, and then we'll see, and hopefully we'll get the deal across the line. I think over the next couple of months we'll be sitting down and working with the InterOil management and seeing how we can bring the two companies together, and we'll see. It's a bit too early to say.
All right. Now, the ICCC has expressed its concern over the proposed acquisition, saying it may hinder competition in the natural gas market in PNG. What is Oil Search take on that?
Well, firstly, look, we'll go and have a discussion with ICCC and obviously treat their sensitivities seriously. But I think the local gas market in PNG is absolutely tiny. In fact, it's pretty well non-existent. So competition in the local gas market isn't really applicable. But we'll work our way through the ICCC processes and work with them and ensure that we comply. But we don't think this will be a barrier to what is, frankly, a very significant industry investment in the country.
All right. When we come back, we continue our discussion with Mr. Botton and focus on another part of the announcement, an MOU with Total. You're watching Resource PNG. Welcome back. Now, Mr. Botton, looking ahead to the immediate future for InterOil, now this acquisition has been touted as the start of a more exciting period for Oil Search. If this acquisition is approved by InterOil shareholders, the company will also be in charge of a large part of the LNG business in the country. What does this say about the power of Oil Search at this time?
Well, look, I think the great thing about the future with if this deal actually gets across the line, between ourselves and Cornwall Petroleum in Papua LNG, for instance, PNG interests will hold more than 50% of the ownership of that very critical project to PNG. We think that's very important. We think that's important for the country and important to balance out the interests and ensure that the benefit streams do come back into PNG. Clearly, we sit across, as does Cornwall Petroleum, across PNG LNG and Papua LNG. And we're very much about promoting cooperation between the two projects in the next phase of development so that we minimise the capital costs associated with an expansion of PNG LNG, but also the next phase of the first phase of development of Papua LNG. There is billions of dollars of capital cost savings and long-term operating cost savings which can be done if we cooperate. So I suppose we're very much in the process of talking to our partners, both with Total on one side, Papua LNG side, and ExxonMobil and the PNG LNG joint venture on the other, to ensure that if we are moving forward with expansion and development, we do this with maximum cooperation where that makes sense. And that'll only bring more value to us, but probably the biggest value will come to the government, the state and people of Papua New Guinea if we get it right.
You mentioned capital. Now, cash is king in this business. Having Total buying into 60% of InterOil's current assets, what does that mean for Oil Search? What can you do apart from PNG? Will you be looking outside of PNG?
No, I mean, clearly the Total transaction to us is a very important one because effectively we're on selling 60% of InterOil to Total. We're keeping 40% for ourselves. And clearly the money we get from Total helps us to finance the InterOil acquisition. So we're not stretching our balance sheet. In fact, we're actually bolstering our balance sheet in the event that we need that money for the next phase of LNG development. So we're coming out actually stronger afterwards than before with Total's backing. That's an important part of this transaction. It de-risks it for us, it de-risks it for our shareholders, and makes Total, again, a very critical partner for us into the future development of Papua LNG.
As you mentioned, Oil Search is in a unique position. It's involved in PNG LNG and also the development of Papua LNG. Now, with this transaction, how does it fit into the long-term vision of Oil Search?
Well, our vision is to become a regionally significant LNG producer, and we do genuinely believe there's at least 2 more LNG trains, one from PNG LNG and one from the Alcantelope field, Papua LNG, at least 2, maybe 3. And if we're able to do that, we would like to see investment in those developments soon. I think an investment of significance can ease a lot of the economic challenges that the country is going through right now. Now is the great time to build, because it's done cheaply, because the market's very weak. And it is a time when our spread of interests across the 2 projects can help the process of speeding up this next phase. At the end of the day, we think by 2022, 2023, Oil Search will have more than doubled its production base with these new developments. And we will be approaching a really significant regional LNG producer, not quite the size of Woodside, but getting very close. So this is a real pivotal moment for us, a really important moment in the next phase of development of the LNG business here.
You mentioned Woodside. They did put in a bid for Oil Search last year. The deal fell through. Oil Search is coming back now. It's acquiring InterOil. But the market says, there are different people in the market that say this could be a front for another takeover by another super major into Oil Search. If the price is right, if there was a price that you could name that Oil Search could be acquired for, would you be able to provide that for our viewers?
Look, I don't think I can provide you that number. Everything's for sale at the right price. And in reality, what Woodside put on the table last year, as indicated to us by all our shareholders actually, wasn't anything like enough. And our growth projects that we have in PNG are some of the most outstanding in the world. And what we've done in merging and taking over InterOil only builds on our position, makes us stronger, and develops that growth path further. So look, everything's available at the right price, but I'm sorry I can't tell you that price today, because who knows what might be coming over tomorrow. I could be getting even more the next day, you never know.
Now, Mr. Botton, the national government of PNG is a shareholder of Oil Search, and obviously all Papua New Guineans will be interested to know how we will be benefiting from this deal.
Well, I think firstly, this deal allows us to be substantially more influential in making sure that the next phase of development in PNG for LNG is done in the most capital effective, the most timely way. We do genuinely believe that with cooperation between the 2 projects, we can reduce the capital costs. That means that the tax that we pay as a developer will be higher, and will result in more benefits coming back to the state. That's just one aspect. We also believe that with cooperation we can accelerate development, address some of the economic needs through a large-scale investment in PNG, bringing jobs, bringing skills, in a similar way to how PNG LNG was back in 2010. And let's face it, we need that stimulation in the economy to really drive growth and allow us to collectively deliver services that are so desperately needed by our people.
On that note, Mr. Botton, thank you so much for taking time to speak to Resource PNG.
Great to be here. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
And viewers, that brings us to the end of this episode of Resource PNG. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us on the address now showing on your screen. For all the latest updates on developments within the resource sector in the country, check out our Facebook page. To view this program online, log on to the MTV website, where you will find a link to the Resource PNG page. Until the next time, pleasant viewing. Bye for now.